Thank you, President Carey, and all the members of the club for putting on such a great and well-attended meeting. How great is it to be out with all our friends again? It feels good. It was very good. All right, so I want to say a few thank yous before we start because I don't want to forget at the end of this, and this is important. So first of all, Marty Wisher standing in front of me, thank you so much for coming, setting up the Facebook Live, doing the YouTube for us. It's very, very appreciated. I want to thank Abe Thornburg, who left, but he provided all this AV equipment. He has a band. The state attorney's office has a band. He's one of my deputy chief assistants. He's in charge of the Everglades office. And yes, he has a band, and yes, this is his equipment. So thank you to him for that. He comes in useful sometimes. A huge thank you to KJ, who very generously gave us this room, which normally costs a very high fee to get this room. So owner Warren Fry, who I know is here somewhere, thank you to you. And Mike Gervasio, the general manager, thank you to you also. And Dino Kominsinski, the event coordinator, they all helped us with this and made this happen, which I think they did a great job. The food is great, and thank you to all our servers also. Okay, so candidates, I think most of you have been through this. Too loud, my husband's telling me okay, let's try this again. Can you all hear me if it's down this low?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so most of you went through this with me last week. Mr. Askar, I know you weren't with us last week, but I did speak to Nick, and we went over how we did it. It will be the same way, which I'm going to review with everybody. Each of you has drawn a number. That is so, it's completely random. Who goes first, who goes last, who's in the middle, etc. So this time, I'm a little bit better organized. We're going to place you according to your number. And we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I apologize for the echo. I'm not really sure why it's doing it, but that's how we're going to sit. All right? And then I will pass the microphone. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably going to remain a problem, so everyone's just going to have to step forward from their seats because the speaker is right there, which is causing the reverberation. I need Javi to tell me what to do. All right, so you've already picked your numbers. If you would come on up, and then I'm going to go over the rules. So number 1, Randy, you'll sit over there. Number 2, next to Randy here, and let's keep going. Oh, you're number 8, Randy, so you're down in the end then. Come on now, Randy.
I told him to just go ahead and die.
Well, you can all stand for now while I go over the rules if you want. How this is going to work, because we only have one microphone, is as we start, I will bring it down to number 1, and then please pass it on. As we get to the middle, I'll pass it on down the line. If you picked number 1, and it's funny, this worked out both our last two, that the number 1 person had the first name in the alphabet. So that's worked out again for you, Mr. Askar. So if you picked number 1, you will go first on your opening. You will also go first on the first question.
No. It's got to face you. You push the whole camera, yeah. Then you push the white button.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, I turned it way down, so hopefully that will do the trick. And someone more inspired. So, Mr. Asper, you will go first. You will also go first on the first question, and you will go first on the closing.
Yeah, we can't hear.
No.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, how are we doing now? Can you hear me better? Yeah. All right, let's hope that stays pretty good. The reason for that is the person who gets to go first on the opening, it said that you have a little bit of an advantage because because you're the first thing people see, and the person that goes very last of all at the very, very end, which would be the person who goes last on the opening, that's you this time, Mayor Henderson, gets a little bit of an advantage because of the recency if that's the last person you see. That's the reason for that rule. So we'll rotate. Everybody will get a chance though. So for instance, Mr. Askar will answer the first question first. That means that Ms. McLaughlin will answer the second question first. Third question first, Mr. Severson, etc. Down the row, everybody will get a chance to answer a question first and answer a question last that way to try to be as fair as possible. If we could, we can get, when the servers have just a moment, if we could get some waters up here for the candidates, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. If somebody wouldn't mind, thank you. And I have some, I don't need them. So other rules. All right, this club has voted, or the president of this club has determined that during this forum, there will be no negative comments made about the other candidates. If you make a negative comment directed at another candidate, the microphone will be taken away from you. That is the rule that this Republican Club has chosen. So please don't do that. Please do not force me to take the microphone away. That is a Republican rule by the Federalists. So that's the way it is. And Ronald Reagan, that's right. A great president. All right, so that's the first rule. The second rule is that there will be, it's a little bit different from last time. You have 1 minute for your opening, 1 minute for your closing, 1 minute for each question. Your yellow card will come up by our timer, my wonderful husband sitting here, at 15 seconds. If you all are welcome to sit and then stand while you answer the questions, you don't have to stand the whole time, it's up to you. But Mike will stand up with the card so you can see them. So you're more than welcome to sit when you're not answering the question. I strongly suggest you stand when you are answering the question. Okay, all right, I think I've gone over all the rules. Now we're going to get started with our opening statements, as we call them in court. All right, so you all, unless you want to, why don't you all sit? And yes, why don't we all sit? Not me, I'm not allowed to. Except for Mr. Askar, who's going to go first on our opening.
Up. Okay.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Amira. Thank you to the club for hosting, and to everyone who's here this evening and everyone who's watching. My story is, my parents came here when I was a little boy to this great country to escape Christian religious persecution. I grew up in a very patriotic home, very small town with blue-collar values and very strong Christian faith. I went, as I grew up, I was very patriotic, and I had the call of duty, and I joined the U.S. Marines. I went on to school. I started a family. My wife and I who's here, Shara, are blessed with 6 amazing children, and 2 of my daughters are here, Isabel and Valentina. I went on to start a business. I grew it into a national enterprise. I employed thousands of men and women nationwide. I'll fight alongside President Trump in Congress. I'll fight for you. I've lived the American dream. Thank you.
Hi friends, my name is Christy McLaughlin. I'm a lawyer, I'm a certified teacher, and I'm a lifelong Southwest Florida resident. The reason why I jumped into this race is because this is my home. I've lived and breathed the issues every day of my life, and I've never left. I even went to school at Florida Gulf Coast University, and I went to law school at Ave Maria School of Law. I have advocated for Southwest Florida since I was 18 years old. In fact, many of you have seen me grow up as part of the clubs and being a member of this society. I also was a project director for the Mother Francis de Sales Auxiliary for the Homeless. And I'm in this race because I firmly believe that we need to do better in Southwest Florida and have a sincere leader who is going to make a change and not fold to the Democrats. We need someone who's going to be strong and face AOC and inspire the young generation to get more involved And I'm a young conservative Latina, and I will proudly do that. Thank you.
I'm Dan Severson, Navy Top Gun fighter pilot. I'm one of those guys that lived the American dream. When I was a kid, I was standing out in the yard and I saw an F-105 flying overhead and I thought, that's what I want to do. And God allowed me to fulfill that dream. I was in the Navy for 22 years. I retired as a commander, went through Top Gun flight school, spent 3 years in Washington, D.C., 3 years in the desert doing RDT, research, development, test, and evaluation. Retired and moved back to Minnesota to be by our parents for their last years, and got elected into the Minnesota House of Representatives for 8 years, 4 terms, served 4 in the majority, 4 in the minority, became a minority whip in the last my last session there, and we held back $3.2 billion in tax increases. I know how to work with Democrats, and I know how to hold them at bay. And this is really an important position. This is a district that has a plus 16 red district. Whoever wins this race wins the race. So I want to thank you for being here tonight and here.
Thank you all for coming out in person. It's nice to see so many faces. Thank you to Carrie Tonkin and the club for organizing this, and everyone at KJ's for hosting us. This is wonderful to see so many faces. I'm Dane Eagle. I'm the Republican Majority Leader in the Florida House of Representatives. I'm born and raised right here in Southwest Florida. I look forward to welcoming our son here in 2 weeks, who will be born and raised here in Southwest Florida. This has always been my home, and always will be my home. And the reason I ran in 2012 is because we saw our home faltering. We saw the recession come out and rip the rug out from under us. And I went to Tallahassee and I fought for our conservative principles. We cut taxes by $10 billion in the last 8 years. We, as Majority Leader, I fought alongside Governor Ron DeSantis to ban sanctuary cities and pass E-Verify. I've been term limited, which is a wonderful thing, but I'm asking you to send me to Washington so I can fight along President Trump with the same kind of agenda that I've pushed for in Tallahassee. And I promise you I will not let you down. So if you're looking for consistent conservative leadership, someone who's going to stand for our Constitution, our president, and our country, you can count on me. You can learn more at DaneEagle.com. I'm asking for your vote and look forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Heather Fitzenhagen. I'm the representative for District 78, which is right here where we are. It's wonderful to see all of you tonight. I'm excited to be part of this group and these wonderful candidates because I know that each of us cares very deeply. The reason that I want to continue my service is that I wake up every single day with a passion for serving our community. I think that we've got some serious problems in Washington. The ones that I think are the worst are we have a terrible deficit problem that is going to saddle all of us and every single American with over $80,000 of debt. And we've got to do something about that or we're going to be in serious trouble. We also have an immigration problem. We need to secure our borders and figure out what to do with the immigrants that are here illegally. Lastly, I want to fight, but I also want to reach across the aisle because America right now is in a terrible place. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and I want to thank the great Republican Club here for inviting me tonight and our thoughts and the other candidates. My name is Daniel Kowal. I'm a veteran. I'm a lifelong law enforcement officer. I'm a family man, and I consider myself an American patriot. I'm probably the only one up here that is out amongst the people every day, day in, day out, morning through night. I listen to their problems, I see their ups, and I see their downs every day. And I want to be the voice for that silent majority out there that I see every day when I'm out there on the streets, helping and supporting the people of this great Southwest Florida. With that being said, I'm also going to support Border Patrol because I think it's very important that we secure our borders. And we need to start buying American because we need to take back our industry from China. And I want to just be your representative. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Great to see everybody in a packed room here at KJ's. My name is Byron Donalds. I'm running for Congress because Southwest Florida must have a conservative that all of you can believe in. I've lived here for 17 years. And I got my start in politics actually during the Tea Party movement. It was 2009. and I was one of those young people that decided to go out to a Tea Party rally and get involved. And over the last 10 years in Southwest Florida, I have been a consistent, proven conservative, whether it was being an activist, standing by side many of you here in Southwest Florida, or being in the Florida legislature, where I've served for the last 4 years. You have a lot of choices in front of you tonight and in this election. But the one thing I want you to be focused on is who is going to be the person that is going to hold true to our conservative principles, no matter what's going on nationally, and frankly, no matter what even someone in our own party might say. I am tried, I am true, I am tested. I will always stand for your constitutional rights, because we have to have a conservative you can believe in. I'm Byron Donalds, and I'm asking for your vote.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Randy Henderson. I am Mayor Henderson. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I am a mayor of Fort Myers. And I have used conservative principles. We've heard a lot about conservatism. I've used conservative principles that have been tried and true over the years to move my city forward to be a world-class city. For example, I have participated in balancing 20 consecutive budgets over the last 20 years. We've managed our tax burden. We've created thousands of jobs. We've inspired over $1.2 billion of private investment from those who have found confidence and favor with Fort Myers. I am the battle-tested candidate. If you want to look at this across the room, you can understand that I am the battle-tested one, ready to go and support Trump. When I hit there in January, I'm ready to go. Thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Mara, I just want to remind the candidates, when you have the microphone in your hand, we did have to turn it down a little bit so we wouldn't squeal. Make sure you're giving your stage voice. So you're going to go bouncing because your sound's bouncing for the viewing audience. So thank you.
Thank you, Marty. All right, I know, candidates, some of you need some water.
There's a whole thing up there.
Oh, okay, very good, thank you. All right, reminder to the candidates, don't forget, it's a 1 minute, and you're gonna get a 15-second warning and a red card. I will cut you off with the red card if you keep talking. You all did such a good job on your opening, I'm sure that won't happen. But anyway, that's the rules. So, Mr. Askar, are you ready to start with the first question? Ready. All right, I will hand the microphone to you after I read the question. If any of you need me to repeat the question, just let me know, and I will, of course, repeat the question for you. All right, what, if anything, should the federal government be doing to address the rioting happening across the country as a result of the George Floyd murder in Minnesota? Should the military be allowed to intervene in any instance? Is there any time the military should be allowed to intervene?
I believe that it's a governor and mayor's responsibility to make sure that they keep their community safe, their state safe. But in these liberal democratic states that are not doing so, our president has every right to engage our military in keeping our citizens safe. 100% I agree with that, and I defend that.
So this is a states' rights issue, but when rights are being infringed on, like the liberties of the victims of these riots, it is important to have federal intervention, including military intervention. What's happening in Minneapolis and Baltimore and all of these big cities that are run by liberals is the leftist Antifa terrorist organization has run amok and is destroying their cities, setting it on fire, and letting innocent Americans be harmed, lose their businesses, and it's just an atrocity that we've allowed this to continue. What we also need to do is remember to protect our blue lives. I actually did a ride-along when I was working for the state attorney's office. Thank you, Mira. And my experience with the ride-along is our officers are risking their lives every day, and we're putting them at risk by not intervening when we allow these riots to continue to run rampant. Enough is enough. We need to be strong. We need to be hard on these criminals that are destroying our cities.
We are working on the sound. If you're watching on Facebook Live, we are trying.
Our Constitution covers everyone. And for that purpose, We have 50 incubators, 50 states in which those best practices can be put into practice. And so we have governors, and we have those individuals that look over that state, and when they fail to do their job, then it does fall onto the president to fulfill the constitutional duty of keeping America safe and keeping those constituents safe. So when you have people like the Attorney General Keith Ellison out of Minnesota, who I served with, who is not concerned about keeping the people safe. He is connected with CARE, the organization CARE. If you go to the website, you'll find it. But he is undermining our rights in Minnesota, not just in Minnesota, but in Florida and across the nation by stimulating and encouraging this type of Antifa behavior that is undermining our liberties.
This is a states' rights issue, and the president did the right thing by waiting to allow the states and their leaders to step up and do the right thing. But when it was clear that some of these governors were not going to do that, he absolutely did the right thing by stepping up and saying that he will take charge and take handle of this. And I commend our president for doing so. He took an oath to defend our Constitution, our country, against all threats, foreign and domestic. Make no mistake about it, this is a domestic threat. Antifa is a terrorist organization that will stop at nothing to overthrow our government and our Constitution, to make sure that they can spread their anarchist regime and their socialism, which is creeping up through Congress as we speak. We need to send people there who will defend our president. And the people that are saying he doesn't have the right, the Insurgency Act of 1803 allows him to do so. So they are just saying that just to be against him once again. And we need to stand with law and order. Make no mistake about it, what happened to George Floyd is wrong. That was murder, and that police officer should be held accountable. But to say that all of our other lives in blue are forfeit is wrong. I'm married into a family, a blue family, proudly. My wife's mother is a chief of police, and her father is a deputy. We need to stand with our men in blue and stand for justice. And women in blue.
Thank you. I also believe that it's a states' rights issue and that municipal governments and state governments have the responsibility to maintain order. I also, though, agree that the president should always help, encourage, lend whatever resources are possible so that they can do their job if they're unable to do so because of limitations on resources. But if we have tried that and it's not working, the president absolutely has the authority to step in and must step in to protect American lives, and those American lives include the officers that are serving us proudly and bravely every single day. So I hope it doesn't come to that on many occasions, but if it's necessary, I support it 100%.
This is a perfect example why elections are so important. Because these people in these cities, these mayors that run these cities, the governors that run these democratic states, are letting the people destroy their states right in front of them, destroying their cities. That's why elections are so important, that we have the right people in these positions and do their due diligence. Due diligence is to protect people from a third party. And if that means law enforcement, if that means the National Guard, and if that means the president, who's a president for all the people of the United States of America, not ones with R's, not ones with E's, and not ones with I's next to him, he has a duty to protect them. And that's what he's sworn to do. And so is every law enforcement officer out there, and every state trooper, and every National Guardsman. But if you have people that don't care in those offices that want to see this the people torn apart, because you have to divide before you can conquer. And that's exactly what you're trying to do. Thank you.
The president is absolutely right to use the Insurrection Act of 1803. There have been 6 American presidents that have used this act in recent history. The most recent, George H.W. Bush, during the LA riots, during the verdict that came out after Rodney King in Los Angeles. He used the Insurrection Act. So when the media comes out and tries to tell the world that he's turning the military on United States citizens, that's more fake news. Because what he is doing is actually protecting American citizens from those who seek to loot, those who seek to pillage, and frankly those who want to use their political agenda to frankly bring anarchy to our country and destroy this great nation. But there's more than that that's going on. You have blue city mayors and blue state governors who have failed. They failed because they don't want to hold people accountable for their actions. George Floyd's murder was a tragedy. The officers in question are being held accountable. People under the First Amendment should have the right to protest peacefully. But when riots break out, when businesses are burned down, they have to act. They did it, they failed, so the president had no choice but to act.
Ladies and gentlemen, I could spend a lot of time on this subject. Let me just say this quickly. States and municipalities exist to keep citizens safe. I have a lot of experience in this, more than I ever dreamed I wanted to have, but I know a lot about it. I stand staunchly behind our men and women in blue. We have one of the best police forces in the country. They will keep my citizens safe. They will keep you safe. They will protect peaceful protest, and they have protected peaceful protest. I have every confidence, and I have more confidence in addition to that because we have other law enforcement available in our area to help. And if anarchy shows up in our city, it will not be tolerated, and the United States military stands ready to come to our aid if needed. But I assure you, Fort Myers PD is ready to deal with any anarchy, and they will protect those who are peacefully protesting the murder of George Floyd. Thank you.
All right, Ms. McLaughlin, you're going to start us off on this question, and this is around the same subject matter, which is, as we've all been watching, the things that are unfolding in front of us, which I find unbelievable. I've had lengthy conversations this week with the sheriffs in our area, the police chiefs. They have a huge concern. They're watching defund the cops. They're watching cops get shot. They have a huge concern. They will not be able to adequately staff their departments. They already were having trouble staffing their departments. What are your ideas to address this issue? Because as we all know, without our law enforcement, chaos will descend on us. Do you have any ideas for this?
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you asked that question because, as I had mentioned a little bit before, when I did that ride-along during my job at the state attorney's office, my experience was we had a packed night, and it was a Tuesday, 5 hours full of domestic violence calls. There was a fire. There was a theft call. There were so many issues. We need to protect our blue lives because they're keeping us safe. So yet again, this is a state's issue. But the problem is, when rights are being infringed and the American people are no longer safe and their personal liberties are no longer protected, we need that government intervention to ensure that we do not defund the police. We need to continue a strong police force. Because as we're seeing right now with the riots in Minneapolis, we have to have stronger law enforcement than ever. Because this is an abuse of an atrocity that had to happen to George Floyd. This is an abuse to take advantage of the American people and to destroy our city. And so that's where it's a states' right issue, but if those rights are being infringed upon, that's where the intervention comes in.
Well, as Daniel said, elections have consequences. And so when you look at the individuals who are asking that, or actually voting on the issue that the budgets of their police forces are being cut and extracted out, who's going to respond? Now you have a county respond. My suggestion, and as you asked for some suggestions, would be that before that happens, there be a public notice that goes out and gives the address, the phone number to all of the city council members who are making that decision. So that when that family is having their house broken into, they have someone to call that they know is going to answer that call. And if they don't answer the call, then you get your whole neighborhood to go over to their house and ask them more.
I've got an idea on that. Let's send our local men and women in blue to D.C. to form a task force because obviously things are going all right here. People have been peaceful and things are going well. These blue cities, blue mayors, and blue governors that are calling to defund the police are supporting anarchy. They're going to let these rioters, and I mean rioters, not peaceful protesters, they're going to let these rioters take over our country. We cannot have that. So I want to give credit to Sheriff Carmine Marcino. I think he had to leave. He's doing a great job. Mayor, I'll give credit to you and your mayor, Chief Gates, for doing what he's doing there. All of our mayors and our local municipalities are doing a great job. Michael, you serve down in the Collier County, so thank you for what you do. Or Daniel, I'm sorry, Daniel. So I give great credit to our local men and women in law enforcement, our men and women in blue for doing the right thing here in Southwest Florida. I'm proud to stand among you. Thank
Amen.
you.
Thank you. I believe that we need to provide more resources for law enforcement. I don't think that they have enough. They have such an important job, and I think that there's so much involved, and they need to keep themselves safe with body armor and cameras and advanced training and everything that they can. We need to provide them every tool in the toolbox. Having said that, I would also like to see additional meetings between not violent protesters, but community leaders in different sectors of the community, so that the police department or sheriff's department can sit down and have a face-to-face and try to have an understanding so that everyone feels as if they are being heard. I'm not promoting any kind of violence. I'm just promoting a dialogue with more resources for our officers.
Like I said before, I'm a career law enforcement officer. Almost 30 years in law enforcement between Washington, D.C. and here in Southwest Florida. The last 18 years here in Collier County Sheriff's Department. This is my first night off in a week and a half. I've been standing in line with the rest of the troops and my brothers and sisters in law enforcement with the protests that are going on in Collier. Thank God we have a great Sheriff's Department down there. And we have a great relationship with our minority community too. And that's what's important. This defunding of police is crazy. It's very tough. Because I was standing right there the other day when the truck was coming through and it bumped one of the protesters, and the first thing the girl screamed, "Call 911. We're like, we're standing right here. And these people are there protesting, and they're the first one to call you on a Friday night when somebody rips them off, or their boyfriend's beating them up. But they'll stand there and call me everything I can't even say in front of these fine people. But I'll be the first one called to help them out. So this is crazy. I'm sorry.
Defunding the police is the stupidest thing I ever heard of in my life. You know, one of the things that actually made me a conservative is how I grew up. You see, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in the inner city, and I saw the failure of liberalism up close and personal. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a young guy, well, I'm not young anymore, but when I was 16 years old, I was held up at gunpoint. My mother didn't call Black Lives Matter. My mother didn't call Al Sharpton. My mother called the police. And they were there to try to make sure that they could do everything that they could to make sure that I felt safe in my community of Brooklyn, New York. Our police are fantastic for the most part. They do a great job for the most part. In areas like these, yes, we should prosecute. But defunding the police, that is liberalism at its worst, and it will destroy this country. And we need leaders who are going to stand against it.
Danny, thank you very much. Byron, you're right. Stupid is and stupid does. I, by virtue of my counsel, led the charge in a unanimous vote to reform our police department. Not something that I had asked for. There were people in this room who helped me with that. Professionals who helped me sponsor police reform in professional ways. We have poured millions more, as it was said up here. You don't defund your police department. 42% of our $130 million annual operating budget goes to public safety. That's why we exist. We have one of the best PDs because we gave them more money. Heather, you're right about that, several million. We have one of the top crime labs in the country, right here in Fort Myers, of 413 cities in Florida. That's how you do it. We've done it. I've lived it. Thank you.
We're a nation of law and order. Defunding the police department is insanity. We need to let the police know that we've got their back, that leadership has their back. They're out in the streets getting attacked every single day, and their leadership behind them is backing them up. They're throwing them under the bus, and that's insanity. We need to do better for our police officers, and that's what this is for.
And thank you for your comments, because I can tell you that's what I do for a living for 30 years is work with police officers, and they work their you-know-what's off. And yes, there's a bad apple here and there, but for the most part, they are fighting to protect all of us. And for any of you that don't know this area, once again, lowest crime rate 8 years in a row now. Change subjects a little bit, and Mr. Severson, you're going to start us off this time. So, directly, I want you to tell us, is China the biggest threat facing our country in the 21st century? And if so, what are you going to do about them? And if not, what is the biggest threat?
Yes, China is absolutely the biggest threat that we face in our national security issues now. When the COVID issue came about, it was one of those things that China had hatched out of Wuhan, and they had perpetrated throughout the world. We were busy dealing with that while they had, around the backside, gone into the Southeast Asia Sea, and they were attacking fishing vessels in Vietnam. They're doing aggressive acts towards Taiwan. And so they pretty much figure that we're just kind of not paying attention. But they are, in a major way, undermining our intellectual property and testing the waters for takeover. There's a book called The 100-Year Marathon that talks about the Chinese strategy. I've been in the process of reading that. They operate through deception and by keeping their profile low until they're sure that they can take a country over. We aren't that far from that happening. Their GDP is 15, I'll get to it later.
Absolutely, China is the number one threat in the 21st century. We have threats forward and domestic and socialism, foreign, it's absolutely China. They were allies after World War II, but they have been stopping at nothing to make sure that they overcome us. They want to be the number one military and economic power in the world, and guess who's in their way? We are. They do not see us as their friends. They see us as someone that they can take advantage of and overcome us. So what I propose is that we actually put them on trial. Just like we did with Nazi Germany after World War II, we had the Nuremberg trials. We should take China to court in Wuhan. It will be called the Wuhan trials, and we will find out exactly what they knew. Did they do this on purpose? Was this an attack on the American people? Was this an attack on the worldwide economy? Was it intentional or was it neglect? Either way, they need to be responsible, and they owe us at least $5 trillion. $1 trillion for the debt that we have, and we owe them, and $4 trillion for the rising costs that we have through our CARES packages. They owe the taxpayers every dollar that we have spent, and we need to go and get it through the Wuhan trial.
I think China is a very real threat to the United States, but I also think we need to remember that we are interlocked with China. Our trade with China, every major business has manufacturing in China. We have debt with China. They're our biggest trading partner. So we have to look at that. We also have to think about our deficit as a danger, because if we don't have the money to defend ourselves against China and others, we're going to be in a tough place. The other thing is the terrorism that can come across our borders is a very real threat. Lastly, another huge threat is the American mentality. The American mentality is in two pieces. We need to find a way to bring that together and be united, have a united front as Americans, and that to me is a huge threat if we don't fix it.
China is definitely our number one adversary overseas. The Chinese government in Beijing and their regime has been wanting to be number one in the world for a long time, but we've always stood in their way. So they've been attacking us in different ways. They steal our industry ideas, they make things cheaper, they make a lot more of it, and we buy it in this country. So our money goes over there and fuels everything they do. That's the first thing. We have to stop buying Chinese products, and we need to start buying American. China will never come to our land. They will never attack the United States, because we have one thing they don't have. We have a Second Amendment. And we have 238 million guns out there, the citizens of it. They will never invade our properties. They'll never come onto our shorelines. That being said, our biggest adversary is Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, because she will not let our president do what he has to do for the Americans. Okay, that's the biggest problem.
Good.
I think we have unilateral agreement that China is our number one adversary, followed shortly after that by the Russians. But we can't lose sight of what Vladimir Putin is and what he wants to do in his part of the world. But what are we going to do about it? A couple of things. Number one, China has some of the most favorable trading statuses in the world because of their standing as a developing nation at the World Trade Organization. How are you a developing nation when your economy is second to ours? That doesn't make any sense. So that's got to change and that's got to go away. We have to continue the work that the president is doing in renegotiating trade deals. Frankly, trade deals that have been negotiated by terrible, weak American leadership for the last several decades. The last one was the Pan-Pacific trade deal that President Obama tried to negotiate. And thank God President Trump got rid of that one before it took hold. So we have to redo trade deals. We have to make sure we change their status at the World Trade Organization. But make no mistake about it, China is on a march, not just to be the dominant economic power, but to be the dominant military power. They want to surround us, and we have to be strong with our military and with our leadership in Washington.
Certainly, as Byron said, there's a universal agreement on that. China is not friendly to the United States of America. They are our adversaries. What we have to do is find world peace through a strong military, and we are doing that. Our commander-in-chief is doing that. I will continue to help him do that when I get to Washington. The other thing is, if you paid $5,000 to get a new air conditioner, and your air conditioner didn't work, you would hold that person accountable. We have the World Health Organization. We pay $800 million a year for what? To protect citizens across the globe. That was an abject failure. They're in cahoots with China. We have to rein them both in, bring them some discipline, and we have to do that, as our commander-in-chief is doing, through trade sanctions. You got to hit their billfold hard, and you have to have a strong military to hold them into a disciplinary place of action.
I wish I had a long enough time to give this answer. China is definitely our number one external threat. Number one. Liberalism, socialism is our number one internal threat. We're fighting a war of ideology. What do we do against China? There are many different stop measures that we can take. Going after Chinese debt, as many people have mentioned. Holding them accountable by reparations, as some people have alluded to. The first and most important thing that we have to remember is, right now, American assets are cheap because our economy has been decimated. We have to make sure that we prevent Chinese companies and Chinese businesses from acquiring American assets here and globally. So we have to put a stop measure in place to prevent that from happening. We can do that. The other thing is incentivize big business to come back, American companies to come back and produce and manufacture here in America. We can do that. We can incentivize them. We can level the playing field. There's many stop measures that we can take. President Trump needs support on how to do that. Thank you.
The Chinese Communist Party is our biggest threat. They're an aggressor. Now, applying the Nuremberg trials is not the best solution because the Nuremberg trials applied international law with international courts. I want to apply American law. They attacked the United States, and we are going after China for their constant attacks, not only stealing intellectual property, our terrible trade deals, which thankfully President Trump has imposed tariffs against China, but we need to continue to do that. And then most recently, the Wuhan virus attack, because there was deliberate actions to continue to put the American dream on its knees by ensuring that the Wuhan virus spread throughout our country. We need to hold them accountable with the $1.3 trillion debt that we owe. It needs to be forgiven. But then I would like to take them to court with American law. And if we're interlocked with China, that needs to end. Our reliance and foreign dependency on China needs to end, and it needs to end now. Thank you.
All right, Representative Eagle, you're going to start us off with question number 4, which is, we've seen 2 prominent senators, both of whom are Republicans, come under heavy criticism for selling stock right before news of the pandemic went public. What are your thoughts on this? And to avoid any perception of impropriety, will you pledge to put your assets in a blind trust and forfeit control of your stock portfolio during your time in Congress?
On the second part, absolutely. And on the first part, that's exactly what's wrong with Congress. And the Senate is a part of Congress. We need to get rid of these career people that go up there and do not support the voters. They're up there to support themselves in their pocketbooks.
That's right.
We need term limits, and that's first and foremost. So we will need to fight for that. We got that done at the state level. We've been pushing for term limits left and right on term limits. That's a fascinating, wonderful thing. We've also signed on for the Convention of States at the state level, and I was helpful in doing that to make sure that if Congress doesn't do it, at least the states can step up and do it. And Florida's on board to do so. So absolutely, these senators that are selling your, quite frankly, faith to make sure that they are rich and they're padding their pocketbooks, they need to go. And we need to elect them out. I don't care what party they're from. That's the problem with party politics in Washington. I've seen it in Tallahassee, and we'll fight for it in Washington as well.
Career politicians are opportunists in many cases. There are a lot of good people up in Washington, but people that sell on insider information, whether they're politicians or otherwise, should be held fully accountable. It's an absolute disgrace to use insider information to benefit yourself that when other people don't have that. So I think term limits are one thing. I think the bringing them to trial, I think, is another thing, because that sets a terrible, terrible example of the kind of leadership that we have in Washington and elsewhere when they're that dishonest.
Well, if I had a stock portfolio, I would let somebody run it for me. Safeguard it or however you want to do it. But that being said, I'm going to get a pension when I retire from the Sheriff's Department. But listen, nobody's above the law. They put Martha Stewart in jail for a very similar thing like this. Okay? Why is a senator any different?
That's right.
Okay? If they are found that they did something wrong or illegal, then they should pay the prices like anybody else. The scales of justice, if you look at the statute, she's blind. There's a reason she's blind, because she's not supposed to look at race, creed, color, race, gender, or job. If you broke the law's the law.
If they're found guilty, they should be removed from the United States Senate immediately. And let's be clear, if the law is going to be against every American, it has to apply to Congress. And they are not better than us. They are not exempt from the laws that they try to pass for us, although they try to do that with Obamacare. You guys remember that one? They try to do that with Obamacare. We got to hold them accountable. But the way you do that, frankly, is through term limits. But the biggest question is always, well, okay, we all love term limits. We all support it. How are you going to get it done? Here's my idea. The next time we have one of these debt ceiling debates that come up, everybody knows those. They come up every now and again. Here's what we need to do. We will not borrow another dollar. We will not spend another dime till Congress term limits itself. Because they have failed. Because if they wanted to have balanced budgets, they would. The problem is they're accustomed to their own power because they don't have to leave. That is un-American. That is not what our country is built upon. It's time to term limit Congress, and I'm going to be a true champion on that issue.
Amira, the second part of the question is absolutely. I'm for transparency and doing the things that give you, the voters and citizens, trust and confidence in my ability to lead and lead with integrity. As mayor, I have been subject to a lot of charges against me, and all of them have been investigated to the fullest extent. And I have always come clean on, and I invite any investigation because I've suffered it. If you're an elected official, you are a trust for the citizens, and you are obligated to deal with integrity. So I want to disclose the lawful way the finances. If a blind trust works, I'm for that. And those who are unlawful have to be brought to justice. I don't care how rich or poor you are. Plain and simple. Thank you. I like term limits.
I am for full transparency. The problem that we have here is political elitists doing business with economic elitists. That benefits elitists, not the middle class, not the American family. For me, I've always invested my money in Main Street, not Wall Street, so I have no issue with not having trade accounts. In fact, I don't trade. I believe that we need to send people to Washington that are political outsiders, that can't be bought, just like President Trump, that don't need any lobbyist money. They're there to do their job, get it done right, and go home. Thank you.
limits is an important concept, but before we get there, we actually need to elect the right candidate. And we make sure that we have the right elected official in that seat. Now, Nancy Pelosi is one of the biggest culprits of this issue, and that's why there were laws established against it. However, given that I'm being censored and not being able to speak to the full extent of my freedom of speech, I'll speak in generalities. We have career politicians in this race, and we have a lot of money, economic elitists, investing into this race, and you gotta wonder, what is the return on investment that they are seeking? You have to be careful here, very careful, Southwest Florida, and find exactly who is going to be protecting the interests rather than lining their own pockets. Thank you.
I also have signed the term limit pledge, and I think it's most important to understand what drives Washington and why people are getting into this position, because we have special interests that have infiltrated, they've gotten in, and they've gotten the ear of both congressmen and senators. And they have made deals on the outside now that we see every once in a while, and we see just a small amount of rage that goes on for just a small amount of time. There's all kinds of promises of reform, and that thing is going to take place, and then when it comes out of the limelight a year later, it all goes back to the same. So I believe that there needs to be new regulations in terms of lobbying and the ability to push into campaign funds. That would detour a lot of the things that are going on in Washington now. I will submit to the terms of the stock.
And Representative Fitzenhagen, you're going to start us off on this question. So some healthcare professionals and policymakers are calling for legislation making it mandatory for face masks to be worn while in public. Would you vote against this?
Oh,
Now, that's an obvious question, right? So what I'm really looking for is your feel on anything that the government does to mandate to somebody what their health care decision should be.
Thank you. I absolutely 100% do not think that the government should mandate health solutions for you. That's ridiculous. Now, having said that, if you choose to wear a face mask, I am not going to harass you. And if I choose not to wear a face mask, I expect you not to harass me. I think we should be responsible for our own choices. The government shouldn't be involved. It's called personal responsibility, and you do what's best for your health and your family's health. That's it.
I believe anything that deals with you personally and your body and your health is between you and your personal physician. It's not the government's place to tell you to wear a face mask or not to wear a face mask. Okay? I choose not to wear one. And I'll be honest, why I do is because I'm a strong guy. Okay? I want to catch COVID. That way I can get the antibodies, and I'll donate my blood to any senior that may be suffering and may have the opportunity, that may not be going through it that great. I'd rather do that because I know I'll get through it, and that's just the kind of guy I am. I serve others before myself.
I like that. First of all, let me just tell you, the biggest problem with not the question, but the politicians who are thinking they can tell you what to put on your face, is that too often you have people who get elected who think that all of a sudden they are smarter than you, they know how to control you, they know how to tell you what to do. But that is not the basis of our country. That is not the basis of our society. This nation was created to be free from tyranny, not to adopt it because we're scared of a virus. And so when you send somebody to Washington, or you send them to the state legislature, or you're electing your county commissioner, or whatever the election is, it doesn't matter. When you're electing somebody, do they have the mindset for restraint? Do they know the limits of their power and authority, and do they respect it? Are they always going to uphold the Constitution even when it's not convenient? Those are the things that matter when you're electing somebody. Face masks and healthcare, they have no role. It's not in our Constitution. They shouldn't even be talking about it. But unfortunately, we have too many liberals who think they can tell you what to do simply because they got voted into office. And it's unacceptable. It needs to stop.
Well, the short answer is no. The government shouldn't be requiring you to wear a mask. what I like that I think the government could conceivably participate in is giving you, the citizen, the necessary information that would be useful to you to make your own decision about how you want to live your life. I don't know if I'm right about this or not, but I dare say that all that has been done, if it ever were to be tested in the court of law, would probably turn out to be illegal. And yet, I respect those common sense leaders who helped us measure with data and information and said, here's the information, go keep yourself safe and do these things. We had essential and non-essential, so I believe that there was measured approach to helping, and that's a good role to play. But this is the United States of America. We're free.
I do not believe the government should tell us that we need to wear masks. In fact, on Sunday Mass, we have to wear them, and my wife and I can't even breathe in them, so I can tell you, I'll never wear one. I think that government plays too big a role in too many things. Healthcare is one of them. I know that they have to keep it safe. We've looked at all the models. Most of them have been way off, very wrong. I don't believe that masks truly help the way that they say they do anyways. If you have health issues and you choose to wear one, that's definitely your right, but we should not be forced to wear a mask. Totally against that.
So no, obviously I am very against the concept of having government control forcing people to wear face masks. But you have to apply the same standard for all medical care. You have to respect the autonomy of the individual. And we had some candidates who were stating that they were almost in favor of mandating vaccines. Now, that's a different standard, and it's not consistent. So it's wrong, and we cannot have that kind of government control. And I'll take it a step further. We saw government control with these quarantine orders. They were infringing our First Amendment right to religion, our First Amendment right to assemble, our Ninth Amendment privacy rights, our Ninth Amendment right to travel between states. That is government control. And when you have representatives who are already seeing and trying to enforce these kinds of quarantine orders and control, you got to wonder what they're going to be doing in Congress. And my promise is to defend those rights as I've been advocating from the beginning against these quarantine orders.
I think one of the major issues was that this was put upon us and it was told to us that the masks would be effective. And then it was told that they're not going to be effective. So there was a mixed signal that was going throughout the population. Now they're saying don't gather. All of those things have one thing in common, and that is driving the people to understand their constitutional rights, to actually get into the Constitution and understand, you know, I have these rights because they were fundamentally given to us by our founding fathers. Do I think that this is essential that government should be able to do that? In the past, we've had epidemics, like the smallpox, which required a vaccine, and that was mandated. The Supreme Court came forward and said, yes, this is legitimate, this is the health of the nation at stake here, and that is a fundamental right for the government to impose that. But we never have had that kind of impending doom from this virus, and it has infringed upon our constitutional rights, and that's why I think it's so important that we have a voice in this process.
Absolutely not. The federal government or government at all has no right to tell you what to do in any healthcare manner. The Constitution doesn't say healthcare anywhere, so there, right away, we need to get rid of healthcare from the federal government. It needs to be up to the states. So what we've done in Florida is free market reform, making sure that you have the ability to make your own healthcare decisions with you and your family and your physician. So what happens when socialism creeps in and Obamacare continues to flourish? Well, now your doctors are government employees. So now what are they going to tell you if they have to answer to the socialist government? They're going to tell you to wear that mask. They're going to tell you have to have that vaccine. They have no right to do so. It's unconstitutional. But if we let socialism slip by, it is going to be what is going to happen. So we cannot allow that. And let me tell you a story about face masks. My sister in Alachua County, believe it or not, mandated that every citizen must wear a face mask in public. So what did she do? She sued them, and she won. And now to take it a step further, she's running to unseat the county commissioner and pushed it in. So here's what you do in the face of tyranny. You send it in an eagle. We'll get it done.
All right. So we're going to switch it up just a little bit now. topics, and let's see, you're lucky again, Mr. Cowell. And actually, these questions were written ahead of time when I didn't know what number would fall where, so this is interesting you're getting this question as a law enforcement officer. Do you support allowing teachers across the U.S., not just here in Florida, to carry concealed weapons into the classroom?
I personally feel that it's, as a sheriff's department, a police department, a state police, it's our responsibility to provide the security for our children. Now, if the teacher wants to have a concealed weapons permit, he wants to take it to and from school and leave it in their car, I don't have a problem with that. But we receive tons and tons of training that, you know, don't shoot situations and things like that. And I don't know if anybody ever did the citizen academies where you're put inside their room with the video camera and all of a sudden the guy pulls a cell phone out and everybody's shooting the guy, all right? Well, we don't need that in our schools, I hate to say it. But we need to, well, this is a problem because now we're having a recruiting problem because they want to defund law enforcement. So it's even harder for us to find qualified people to do our job. And we don't want to lower our standards in no way. So we're going to work with what we have, and we're going to do the best we can. If it matters, we got to work 12, 14, 15-hour shifts and make sure we provide security for our children. It's not a law enforcement problem, it's a security problem.
This is a great question. I do believe that teachers should have the ability to carry in schools because, you know, unfortunately, when a mass shooting happens, they are the true first responders because they're there when crisis strikes. Incidentally, there was a bill in the Florida legislature that had this very provision in 2017, but I also voted against that bill. Let me explain to you why. Because in that bill, House Bill 7026, was also measures of gun control that was passed through the Florida legislature, both House and Senate, and signed by the governor. In that very bill, it took away the gun rights of people in our state between the ages of 18 and 21. Now, I totally believe that teachers should be able to carry in the classroom, and I'm glad that we have the ability to do that. But what I would never do is trade your constitutional rights, in order to get something like that done. Unfortunately, there are some people who did make that trade. And if you're going to say you're going to stand for the Constitution, you must stand for the Constitution all the time, no matter what.
Yeah.
These are the complex questions of our day. I've had a concealed weapons license for 35 years or so. I value that and I treasure it. And I think I am for a system, a policy that provides trained professionals on campuses across America, which include teachers. And if teachers want to be trained and certified to where they meet a certification of trained professional, and if they like doing that and they feel secure in their classroom doing it and protecting their students, I'm for that. And if a teacher chooses not to, I'm for that. That's their choice. Bottom line is we've got to keep citizens safe. I love people who are willing to take that responsibility. And with that responsibility comes responsibility. Okay?
I do believe that teachers, should they have a concealed weapons permit, to be able to carry and defend our children. I have my own concealed weapons permit. I always have. I believe that a teacher has the right to have that, protect all of our kids. With that being said, I do believe that we have a lot of retired law enforcement officers, military personnel that can also provide security for our schools and give additional security to the teachers. But if the teacher goes through the process and is qualified, I support that 100%.
Teachers should be packing heat. I'm a certified teacher in Florida, and in 2016, I was in a 4th grade classroom as a teacher, and we once received a red alert. And that red alert was notifying us of a stranger on campus that hadn't checked into the office. Now, thankfully, it turned out to be nothing, but in that moment, my heart was racing and my stomach dropped, because I'm thinking about myself, my safety, and my 44 4th grade students. 44, yeah. 10-year-olds. That right to have a teacher, to have a concealed weapon to protect not only themselves but their students while they're sitting ducks in a school is so important to protect. Now, since Byron brought it up, The bill that raised the age from 18 to 21 and implemented red flag laws is wrong. It is an infringement of our Second Amendment rights, and those that supported it, R-I-N-O. What does that spell? Rhino.
Well, I support that that proposal that teachers be able to carry in the classroom as long as they have been through the sufficient training. I am a substitute school teacher as well. I've been in the classroom, and I can tell you from talking with other teachers as well, the first passion is for their children's safety. It's for those that they have oversight over. Those are the ones that need to be equipped to be able to meet that need at that time. And so I would also jump on board to say there was a constitutional violation that took place in that red law bill. And so the red flag bill, I'm sorry. We need to make sure that the people that we send to Washington, D.C. are committed to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
I'm a gun owner, a concealed weapons permit holder, and an NRA member, and I've fought to protect and defend the Second Amendment for my 8 years in Tallahassee. I've sponsored and co-sponsored nearly 20 bills, and I would say that record's unmatched, to make sure that you have the right to protect and defend yourselves. We did have the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. Let me tell you what that does and what it doesn't do. What it does do is it allows teachers to carry weapons on school grounds, because as a government, we tell teachers you cannot carry and support your Second Amendment on school grounds. We as government will protect you. Well, what happened that day? 17 people died, including 3 teachers who otherwise would have carried. We got that done. We said enough is enough, and we will allow teachers to have the right to protect and defend themselves. Now, let me tell you what it didn't do. It did not take away the rights of 18, 19, 20-year-olds to keep and bear arms here in the state of Florida. There is a retail provision in there, endorsed by President Trump. There is constitutional due process in there, endorsed by President Trump. So the candidates up here that says they do not support it and it's unconstitutional are saying that the president's Second Amendment stance is unconstitutional. And the candidate that just said that those who supported are rhinos just called the president a rhino. I stand with President Trump. I stand for your Second Amendment.
Thank you. I don't think I can follow that. I do agree with that. I would say that just as a reminder, the decision about gun rights and whether you can have it in the classroom and carry concealed belongs to the states. And I think it was well done, what we did in the state of Florida, to make it responsible for the school districts to make the decision. I'm a huge proponent of the Guardian program that allows trained teachers to be able to carry and protect our children. To me, it's not enough to have a concealed weapons permit. You have to have the proper training, and you have to maintain that proper training, because it is a deadly weapon, and you have to take that very, very seriously. Thank you.
All right. Representative Donalds, you're up. All right, water quality. I haven't asked you that in two times, so it's time to talk water quality. It's a consistent topic of discussion, especially in the congressional district you're running for, CD19. Do you know what SERP is and when it was passed? And can you tell us how many projects are in it and how many have been completed so far?
SERP, or the Central Everglades Restoration Plan, was passed. I believe it was in the late 90s it was passed. It's a plan that basically has more than 67 projects in it. And what it does essentially is there's a 50-50 partnership between the federal government and the state government to actually restore and repair the Everglades from what the Army Corps did to the Everglade flowway system in the 50s, in the 1950s here in Southwest Florida, really in all of South Florida. At the federal level, our next congressman has to do exactly what Francis Rooney and before him Kirk Clausen has done, and make sure that we actually fund the federal portion of the Central Everglades Restoration Plan so we can fix our water here in Southwest Florida. I'm completely committed to it because it is not our fault what's happening in our water system. It is frankly the way that flow system was designed, and it has to be repaired. One quick point. Let's be clear on this. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. It is never okay to trade the constitutional rights of an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, or a 21-year-old. That was my stance then. It is my stance now. Let's see who really stands for our Constitution.
Mayor, the Central Everglades Restoration Plan was established, I do believe it was in the 90s, and it's a massive plan that seeks to install through a regular process of installing infrastructure to take the pressure off the Port St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee River and restore water in sophisticated ways to the south. It's well underway. It's about a $24 billion project. We have spent about half that amount and have half to go. It is an infrastructure project that includes the C-43 and the C-41 basins, which in and of themselves are $1 billion projects. I have been in those basins. I've flown over them at low altitude as a general aviation pilot. I know about them. I'm ready to drive that horse home. I have spent a decade of my life working and understanding that very complicated plan. Thank you.
Serpent and 68 projects are detrimental to our water and our economy. I spent plenty of time with our Everglades folks, Captain for Clean Water. It's one thing that I plan on to fight for. One main reason that I'm running is locally for our water crisis. I moved here in 2003, fell in love with Southwest Florida, and we have the highest influx of people moving in than any other state in the union. This is an issue that we have to address, and we have to address it very aggressively. We need to be able to have a representative that can get federal funding and get it in the hands of the right folks and make sure that these projects are being completed efficiently, effectively. We have to hold accountability so every dollar is being spent right. I can tell you as a developer, open-ended projects cost time and cost money. It doesn't work. So we need to make sure that we are effective and attack this very, very aggressively. Thank you.
It's an unfortunate thing that we have to act retroactively with our water, rather than proactively preventing the algae bloom to begin with. Now, unfortunately, my first swim was in Southwest Florida waters. This is my home, and our water quality is so important for our economy, our tourism, and our quality of life. But the issue is, we have representatives who are in office while the algae bloom occurred. And although they blame simply the federal government, their duty as state representatives was to protect our interests and to protect our waters. And yet the algae bloom occurred while they were in office. So now we have to act retroactively. Now, as for shall not be infringed, I second that. And no, President Trump is not a rhino, he just works with them.
I think that Governor DeSantis has done some great work in terms of lowering the level of Lake Okeechobee down to 11.5, holding that volume so that we don't get the outpours that we had in the last algae bloom. That's the first reaction. The second needs to be that in the Kissimmee River basin there is a ton of temporary maximum daily load that's coming down the river, 240,000 tons of extra nutrients that are going into Lake Okeechobee. And the year before that it was 238. It's increasing instead of going down. That's a major problem. That's something our legislature should have addressed, and they don't have the will to make sure that those septics and those branches that are up on the Kissimmee Basin are actually meeting the right requirements to keep the downwash going in. So yes, when I get to Washington, I will advocate absolutely for the funding and continue that funding to make sure the Central Everglades Restoration Project is complete.
The comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan was signed into law in the year 2000 by then Governor Bush and President Clinton. It was supposed to be a 50-50 cost share. Unfortunately, the state has taken on a greater majority of that, about 2-to-1, if not greater. What we've done to try to speed that along in the past several years is in 2016 we passed the Forever Florida Act, Legacy Florida Act, to make sure that $200 million a year at minimum is going towards these projects. In 2017, we passed the Southern Reservoir to expedite that to make sure that water is flowing south. In 2019 and 2020, under my tenure as majority leader, we got a record $1.3 billion for these projects to make sure that water quality is at the first and forefront of our plan. The federal government, thanks to our senators, Congressman Rooney, I'll give him credit, and our president, they got about $500 million. in the past 2 years, 500 million to 1.3 billion. That's what we need, the leadership that we push for in Tallahassee. My mother's a boat captain. I'm born and raised right here in Southwest Florida. This water means everything to me, and I will continue to fight for it and bring exactly what we did in Tallahassee to Washington.
I've been an advocate for clean water since I began running for office because I understand that clean water is good for our health and it's good for the economy. I went out on the front lines to support the bill, which became Senate Bill 10 to authorize the EAA reservoir. I'm very proud of that. I also do not take funding from interests that are antithetical to clean water. And I will not do that if you elect me to go to Congress. A couple of things have not been mentioned, and much has, but we also passed legislation to allow water to flow by US 41, by raising it up so that the water could go south into the Everglades, our nation's treasure, Florida's treasure. That's very important. Critical, right now in Congress, there is a movement afoot to put language in a what's called a savings clause that will restrict the ability for the Corps of Engineers to make decisions that will impact how much water flows and is flushed out into the Caloosahatchee. We've got to stop it.
Okay, clean water is extremely important in Southwest Florida. It is our lifeblood. That's why people come here from all over the country. They want to be here. They want to be part of this beautiful place we all call home. That being said, I can remember watching a commercial of Bill Nelson back in like 1989, standing in front of Lake O, talking about, if you send me to Washington, D.C., I'm going to fix this problem. Okay? And every politician since then, for the past 31 years, have been saying, send me to Washington, D.C., I'm going to fix this problem. Okay? I'm a realist. The thing, what we need to do is we need to start introducing some private investors into this. I don't know, if DeSanti Water wants to come and take the excess water off the lake and put a treatment plant there and sell us bottles of water, I'm fine with that. The only thing that's important is that we have enough water in our canals so our fishermen can get their boats navigated to and from the ocean, or the Gulf, I should say, for us, ocean the other side. Thank you.
All right, we're running short on time, but I'm going to ask one more question because so that each candidate gets a chance to go first and last, like I promised at the beginning. So this is the last question before the closing arguments or statements, hopefully. All right. Are you ready, Mayor Henderson? Last question. In the aftermath of COVID-19, the federal government has taken on an additional $3 trillion in federal debt and may double that in order to help stimulate the economy. Do you know what the size of the U.S. deficit is? And what's your plan to reduce it?
Before COVID, it was approximately 23 trillion. Who knows where it's going to end up? 27, 28 trillion. If I have experience in anything, it's addressing this kind of issue. When I was elected into the city of Fort Myers, we were upside down financially, and I have helped build it and restore it by working to build the economy and inspire thousands of jobs in private sector investing. I will help our commander-in-chief in Washington unleash the power of this American economy and make it so that we can address our soon-to-be 27, 28 trillion dollar problem. I can hardly get out of my mouth. I know how to do it. Let's get busy doing it. Thank you.
Our economy sits at approximately $23 trillion deficit and going towards $30 trillion. And we continue increasing that by approximately $1 trillion per year. We're not going to fix it just by making cuts, by cutting expenses and portion our budgets. There are some stop measures that we can take, and we will do so, but nobody wants to cut entitlement. Nobody wants to cut Social Security. So what are we going to do about it? We can all give you talking points and answers that you want to hear. It's not going to happen. We need to grow our way out of it. I've done this my entire life. In 2008, during the mortgage recession in 2008, I grew our company out of the problem. I hired instead of fired. A lot of businesses went under. We grew. I know how to build business. I know how to build an economy, and that's what we need. We need growth. We need to bring back manufacturing, incentivize all of our business leaders, and make America great again. Thank you.
early on in the quarantine orders, I was saying we're standing at the precipice of a $25 trillion debt. And now we're getting further and further as we continue to put into these stimulus packages and we continued on this quarantine path. So that said, my first proposal and my promise, if I'm elected to Congress, in the first month, I will be holding China accountable, and we will be waiving that $1.3 trillion debt to China. So that will be one removal. But we also need more jobs in America. We need to buy American. We need to manufacture in American. We have to end our foreign dependence. And we can take it a step further by ending some useless government spending with things that weren't a federal government issue in the first place. I'm talking about the Department of Education, for example. That's one example of way too much government spending, and it's a government entity that should not exist in the first place when it was a states' rights issue. That's one way of removing a lot of our federal debt.
We have right now we have a gross domestic product of about $21 trillion a year. That's what our gross domestic product is. So when we're talking about debt of 26, 27 trillion, we're talking about some major implications in terms of financial status on a world stage. And so we've got to get it in control. So I'm not in favor of this fourth stimulus package. I think that the entrepreneurs, the business makers in the states here have the ability to turn that around. As President Trump has started to open up the economy and you start to see the stock market start to surge, that's part of it. We need to create incentives for our business people, get rid of the tariff tax that's coming from China that our people are paying here, and give them the break that they need in their financial circuits to realize that, and give them the incentive to actually do business and grow our business so we can grow out of this process instead of continually borrowing against our future children.
The debt is roughly $25 trillion and growing. Our current deficit pre-COVID was about $1 trillion. Add another 4 or 5. We're sitting at about a $5 trillion deficit just for this year alone. That's exactly the $5 trillion that we need to go after China to get. We can start by making cuts. We can do exactly what we've done in Florida. Our budget is $93 billion compared to New York. Smaller than ours is about $180 billion. Half the size. We continue to make cuts. We continue to cut your taxes by $8 billion a year, and therefore Florida's economy has grown. We are the 16th largest economy in the nation compared to any other country you put out there. $1 trillion economy because we have 1,000 new people moving to Florida every single day. Bring those jobs back from China. Make sure we continue to support the president in his trade wars. Making sure that these people are actually coming back once and for all. Make those cuts and hold China accountable. I led a trade mission to Taiwan this past summer and saw exactly what's happening over there. China is infringing on every single right possible, and they will stop at nothing to make sure that they continue to bring in all of the intellectual technology, all of the IT, and that they continue to win and beat us every way that they can. We need to stand for freedom, and that's where we start.
As I said at the outset, I do believe that our deficit is one of the largest problems that we are facing. And while I also believe that we do need to grow our way out of it, and there have been some very good suggestions mentioned by my colleagues, I think we also have to face the reality that we have had a tremendous economy the last several years. But we still had a deficit. We still spent more than we made. So we have to do both. We have to stop spending, and we have to get the economy back growing. One of the things that I will look at when I go to Congress is subsidies. Why in the world are we giving any business today a subsidy? We do not need to pick winners and losers. We need to let every business compete on their own. I mean, it's not fair to have anyone getting something that another person isn't. The other thing we need to do is we need to take a look at our labor pool and what we're going to do with the illegal aliens that are working here, and that's also giving people an advantage.
Well, 1 minute is definitely not long enough to discuss this problem. 26, $27 trillion, it's unheard of. And we should not leave that to our children and their children and so on. We have to do something. And we need to start, the money we owe China, we need to hold that back. Because what China did to us, it forced us to spend this extra $4 trillion, and then now we're talking about more, another $4 trillion. It's definitely their fault, so no way we should give them that money back, okay? That being said, our borders are another issue. I see it every day. I see a lot of the illegal aliens that are here in this country country working, and they run down to the check mark and they send their checks every Friday over to Mexico, Honduras, and our US dollars go over there, and then those countries take their cut, they hoard our US dollar, it never comes back into our economy, and that's another issue. Like I said, I go on for days on this. This is, it's a big problem, and we need to deal with it head on. But a minute ain't enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree. I wish we had more than a minute to talk about this. Listen, our current debt situation is a little over 25 trillion and growing rapidly. We are around 4.5 trillion in our budget deficits this year. How are we going to fix it? That's really the important question. Part of it is growth. We have to do what we can to continue to gut regulations in our country so American manufacturing can actually come back from the South Pacific, including China, and they can do that work here and continue to grow our economy at home. We have to get rid of things like the Department of Education, but there's more. The Department of Environmental Protection, which frankly what they spend most of their time doing is suing American business. We need to get rid of that agency as well and let the 50 departments of environmental protections that exist in each one of our 50 states, let them do their jobs and protect their sovereign states. The last part we have to do with the Department of Energy is we have to gut that agency as well and start to look at things with respect to our energy complex, like nuclear. Nuclear today is not Chernobyl. It is not 3 Mile Island. It is one of the safest and cleanest ways to actually produce energy, and it is cost efficient for the American consumer. That's some of the beginnings of what we do.
All right. Thank you so much, candidates. That was a set of great answers to great questions. Thank you. All right, now we're going to do your closing arguments. As I said, we call them that in court, but here they're going to be closing statements. Please tell us what it is about you, why we should vote for you, and just talk about yourself, please, not the other candidates.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, we've heard a lot of good talking points, a lot of sound bites, but experience matters. I signed both sides of the check, of the payroll check. I've done that for years. I know how to build business. I've done it for years. I've generated millions of dollars of revenue for our economy. I've created tens of thousands of jobs. I employ thousands of men and women in this great country today. I've always invested into Main Street, not Wall Street. I've always invested in America, never abroad. I know how to build business. I know how to generate revenue. I'll fight for this country, as I always have, as a Marine. I'm battle-hardened. I'm battle-tested. I'll fight alongside President Trump in Congress, and I'll fight for you, and I'll keep America first. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy McLaughlin, and I know I'm the fiery one. As a young woman, it is my job to hold people accountable because I'm looking towards the future of our nation. I'm looking towards my fellow young conservatives who right now are the silent majority, and they feel the need to be silent because we are being censored by socialists, leftists, Antifa, and even some people within our own party. We need to expand the party, and we need to have accountability, to be unbought, unbossed, unburdened, and not accept money from PACs or lobbyists that are going to influence their behavior in Congress, and to ensure that they are only representing the interests of Southwest Florida. My track record has shown that since I was 18 years old as a volunteer for the community, always serving for no benefit of my own other than the best interests of Southwest Florida. My website is christyforcongress.com. I'm working to inspire our young people to fight AOC, Ilhan Omar, and the squad to make sure we work towards a better America. Thank you.
I'm Dan Severson. I spent 22 years as a Navy Top Gun fighter pilot. Part of that took me over to the Far East, where I was able to witness firsthand some of the cultures that were dominated by communist countries, cultures that were so far from the American dream. When I came back, it was one of those things that just drove home to me how precious this country is. Protecting the Constitution and the founders who actually saw the vision of America, that our children could live in a country where they could fulfill their dreams, so that if there's someone that sees the opportunity and seized the opportunity, they can succeed in this country. For me, that's a driving passion. I have a life of public service. After that, I went into the legislative body and worked on law and made sure that the justice was administered clearly across all sectors. To me, this is a heart calling. I have a beautiful wife and family, and I'm blessed to be here in this room in a free country. My name is Dan Severson, SeversonForCongress.com.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's been a awkward last few months, but thank God we're getting back on track. And I thank our president and our governor for leading right and making sure that we can get out and have some freedom again, because this has been wonderful. And I really appreciate having the chance to talk with you. You have a lot of choices, and that's the beauty in democracy. You're going to be able to cast your vote on August 18th or sooner if you do so by mail, which is done well in Florida, or if you early vote. And here's what I have to offer. I'm born and raised right here in Southwest Florida. I'm not going anywhere, and I never will be. This is my home, and I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that we deliver. You have this congressperson that we elect in August will be our 5th congressperson since 2012. We can do the same thing as before. We can elect someone who has come up through the grassroots and has served this community for the past 8 years. Now, I'm not a wealthy man. I've spent the last 8 years of my prime earning years serving you in this community in what's called a part-time legislature. I'm a commercial real estate broker by trade. But if you send me to Washington, I will term limit myself, but not until we get some good work done for this community, some good conservative work, not someone who's not going to do exactly what they said because they haven't spent time with the grassroots, but someone who's going to do exactly that. You can learn more at daneagle.com, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
We are all very blessed that we can sit here today and have this kind of a dialogue and discussion and question and answer. Other parts of the world are not allowed to do that. I want to go to Washington to fight to keep the ability for us to have the freedoms and enjoy the privileges that we do. I've been a mom, I've been an attorney, I've been a business owner, I've served 8 years in the legislature, and I am a principled pragmatist that wants to go to Washington and work on problems, to solve problems, fight for what is right, but reach across the aisle and bring things back that will help our community. And that includes clean water, and it includes being able to keep everything, all the principles that we believe in as Republicans alive. Thank you.
I'm very new to this. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. I've been a public servant my whole adult life, through the military, law enforcement. Over the past decade, we've been sending people to Washington, D.C. We've been sending politicians, and we've been sending big businessmen that want something on their resume or want to check something off their wish list. Okay? I'm not going there to be your leader. I'm going there to be your servant, your representative, your voice. I have to be approachable. You won't go through anybody but me. If you see me in a coffee shop, you can come to me and give me your concerns, and I will bring them to Washington, D.C. I'm Dan Kowal. If you want to know more about me, go Kowal for Congress. It's got a nice ring to it. Kowal for Congress. Kowal for Congress. Thank you.
First of all, thanks everybody for coming out. At the beginning of this, I asked you something, and I asked you to make sure that you look at each one of us and decide who's going to be the best. You got 10 choices in this race. 10. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I've lived in Southwest Florida for 17 years. My career is in financial services. I've worked in banking, insurance, and now financial services here in Southwest Florida over that time. I got my start in the Tea Party movement as a regular citizen concerned about the future of the country. I've been active for a decade in Southwest Florida as one of the most trusted conservatives, by large, in our area. I've served the last 4 in the Florida legislature. And yes, when the time came to stand against party leadership and stand for our Constitution, I did that hard vote against the pressure because our Constitution matters. Our rights matter. And if you send me to Washington, you're not going to have to guess. You're not going to have to think about it. You will know. I will always stand for you. I will always fight for this nation. I will always protect your constitutional rights. I'm Byron Donalds, and I'm asking for your vote.
Okay, last but not least, Amira, in all due humility, I present to you that I am the best candidate for this work. I am Mayor Randy Henderson. I'm the only mayor in the 140-year history of our city, elected for 3 straight consecutive terms. That's my report card. I earned that. I worked very hard for it. My wife and I have been married 41 years this year. I've raised 3 kids. I'm a banker. I'm a real estate person. I'm a mayor. Believe it or not, Dane, our charter says that I'm a part-time mayor. I have worked and led 3 companies successfully. I am battle tested. I have balanced 20 consecutive budgets, municipal budgets, balanced them. I am battle tested. I am ready to go to Washington tomorrow. I am the best candidate for this work. Thank you.
All right, President Tonkin. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, what a crowd. Aren't they great? Thank you. Thank you for all of you to stand up. It takes so much energy to even run for dog catcher, to run for Congress. I mean, my hat is off to you. So bless you. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. We've got a lot of good candidates running for our county, and we're blessed with that. Speaking of candidates, I'll let you go back to your seats in a second, but we do have other candidates. And if we want to start with, just introduce yourself and what you're running for so you get recognized, please.
How's everybody doing tonight? Brian Blackwell, running for State House District 77, which is all of Cape Coral. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Caldwell, running for Property Appraiser and State Committee Man.
Spencer Roach, running for re-election, House District 79.
Melissa Giovanelli for Lee County School District 2. This is District 2. So thank you. I love your support. Thank you.
Ray Rodriguez, running for State Senate, District 27.
Good evening, I'm Ray Sandelli. I was appointed by Governor DeSantis last August, and running for election. So appreciate your consideration and your vote. Thank you.
It's a nonpartisan race, but I'm Kevin Anderson. I'm running for the city of Fort Myers mayor.
Oh, Kevin, I'm sorry. Now, is anybody else this light kind of... Yeah. I'm a star.
It helps the people see you.
Yeah, we have hospital board. You're not running, but welcome, Donna. Good to see you.
Hey, Donna.
And I'd like to give another special thanks to KJ Grill. Just if you don't know, real quickly, the marina decided to close on us last Thursday. So we did the 100-yard dash, my reservations chair and I, and they were so grateful or gracious to allow us to come and have more than 10. I mean, what a blessing this has been. So, and bless you all for coming out. I really appreciate it, and as do the candidates. It's so important that we hear from everybody. We do have a special guest. We are a federated club, and our rules for Reagan's 11th Amendment comes from that federation. It isn't to infringe on anybody's rights. It is, we are Republicans, and under Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, we don't talk bad about other Republicans.
That's right.
And
That's
foreigners.
right.
As the Vice President for the Florida Federation of Republican Women, Diane Van Harris. I'd like to invite all of you again, and we'll see everybody soon, I hope. On July 13th, it's supposed to be a luncheon, and it's going to be a forum with our sheriffs, and our own Priscilla Granis will be the forum moderator for that.